Welcome, everyone. This is the first of two Meet the Candidate forums this year. My name is Angelica Rivas, and I am a Sunnymead Ranch homeowner, just like you. I'm your host for today's event. It will be my job to provide you with the important election details, act as a timekeeper for our candidates, and for our moderator and candidates. After the questions, I will provide a slide with the important dates for the upcoming election. So this event will allow homeowners an opportunity to meet the candidates running to fill the 2 open seats on the board of directors. So this is a list for the 2022 candidates. We have Angel Lopez Ramirez, Thomas Leonard Knowles, and Renee Osborne, which is incumbent. Angel will not be joining us today. He did state in the Sunnymead Ranch community page. So this is directly his statement. Good morning, neighbors and stakeholders. My body temperature reached 101.5 and I'm in need of urgent care. I am in tears this morning that I cannot physically appear before you for the candidate forum. I had looked forward to this event to address your questions and to share my vision, how I can improve your quality of life and maximize homeowner values. So he is focusing on his health and recovery so I can be present for the next candidate forum. I sincerely appreciate neighbors who reached out and sent wishes for my recovery. I have received questions that I shall get to them in better health. Please keep your questions coming to calissav@hotmail.com. That's CALISSAV@hotmail.com. Thank you. So our moderator today is a neutral third party chosen to help facilitate this forum for us. The questions being asked today were submitted directly to our moderator and the candidates have not seen them. Each candidate will be asked the various questions and afforded the opportunity to answer. The candidates will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves and an additional 2 minutes at the end of the forum. Also, the candidate responses to the questions will be limited to the 2 minutes. So as a timekeeper, I will set a timer, and when you guys hear the beep, your time is done. So the moderator today, this session will be conducted by Fred J. Bartz, a well-respected community association and industry leader, experienced speaker, and impartial moderator. Mr. Bartz has served on the Morgan Hill HOA Board of Directors for over 14 years and as president for 12 years. After receiving his Bachelor of Science from Michigan Technological University, Mr. Bartz attended Central Michigan University, where he received his MA in Industrial Management. Later, he attended Detroit College of Law, and before retiring, most of Mr. Bartz's career was in the automotive industry. He spent more than a decade abroad and his last 5 years in Germany with Mercedes-Benz. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator, Mr. Fred Bartz.
Thank you, Angelica, for that introduction. I just have one question. I cannot see all the participants. Is Thomas with us this morning?
Fred, I'm looking down the attendee list. I do not see.
I see 15 participants, but I only see 3 pictures. So.
Right. I see. Hold on. I see Monica Munoz here. Let me see if it will allow her to speak. Hey, Monica.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
How's everyone doing?
Doing well.
Good. So I just heard from Thomas. He is trying to log in. I don't have the special link the panelists have, so he is going to log in as an attendee, and then you could promote him to a panelist. So just keep an eye in the waiting room.
Do we, could you communicate back with him to let us know somehow, perhaps by raising his hand, unless he actually attaches his name? I see some phone numbers and galaxies and.
Okay. Okay. I'll ask him to either raise his hand or *9. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks,
you.
Monica. Bye.
Enjoy.
Okay. Perhaps we should wait a couple minutes so that the way I plan to ask the questions so that they're not repetitive between the 2 candidates.
That would be great. So hopefully, I'm looking at the. So let's see. It's 10:07. Do we want to give 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Members online, please bear with us. It's 10:07 right now, so no later than 10:10, we'll reconvene, and hopefully Thomas will be with us. Okay, I guess we should probably get started. We want to be mindful of our homeowners' time on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to start with one of the questions. One of the questions that I received from one of the homeowners.
Sure.
Considering that there have been a number of mail thefts in the community, what are your plans to eliminate and or deal with this crime?
That's really an interesting question, and certainly one that has crossed my mind. I know in my neighborhood we have the cluster mailboxes, and in other areas within the ranch they have the older style, which I know when I go walking, I find kind of interesting that I'm hoping that those homeowners don't actually, have their mail coming there. Mail theft is an ongoing problem, and I'm not sure exactly how an association can handle it, since it is, regulated by the federal government. That being said, I've often wondered about approaching the Postal Service to see if we could get cluster boxes for those areas that don't have them. I'm not sure where that would go, but and I'm sure that would meet with some resistance as well, because you would have to walk down the street to get your mail and so on. I really don't have a great answer to that. Much like every other crime in the area, as an HOA, our resources are very limited as far as how we can manage that. The only other thing I would strongly suggest is that you get informed delivery, which is a free service through the Postal Service that allows you to see, they scan the mail, just the outside envelopes, of course, and you get an email every day saying this is what's expected to be in your mailbox. So if it's not that greeting card from Aunt Martha with, a Target gift card, that it should be there. And if not, then it's been stolen.
I actually think, Angelica, one of the things that we skipped was the giving the candidates, in this case, candidate, a period of time to introduce themselves. So maybe if Renee, would you like to do that now?
Oh, sure. With any luck, the homeowners on today's session know me, probably not my face, nor my voice. My name is Renee Osborne. I am your current president of the board. I was elected in 2019. And since that time, I've had the pleasure of serving with a lot of very talented and dedicated directors. This role as a director sometimes can be a thankless job, but I think I was going to say the other candidates and our current directors all agree that it is a critically important role to serve our community, because it helps us increase property values, or hopefully maintain property values, while keeping our assessments in a reasonable level. So my goals for, again, my role here is to improve the look of the community. Over the years, COVID didn't help by any stretch, but with our housing prices lower than other counties around us, oftentimes people will come and buy rental properties or properties for rental, and they just don't maintain them very well. Again, our hands are limited to the extent that we can't go and clean up those properties. However, we can and must enforce the CC&Rs. Everybody who buys into this into our association agrees to abide by the CC&Rs and maintain their property. And it is our role to maintain that. And that means strict enforcement of CC&R rules and regulations.
Okay.
So that's me.
Okay. Proceed with the next question. People who live in this HOA want to know who they're voting for and what their talents they bring to the board, shall we say. Please, can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you think you'd be a good board member? I mean, I know you're already one, but I'm asking the question.
Yeah. My talents. Well, I can't sing, I can't dance, that's for sure. My background has been spent in learning and development. So therefore I have an appreciation of continuing education. And that is critical, especially in this role, because being a director on an HOA is unlike being in the corporate world. I found out rather quickly. So having education and being surrounded by other directors who have knowledge and experience helps considerably. I do have a management background, so I've been able to interact with diverse staff, international staffs and clients. I think I do a good job. In communicating, managing expectations through communication. I tend to over communicate at times, and I'm sure that some homeowners watching our board meetings will say, "Enough, Renee, we know what you're doing." But I think there's a huge disconnect between what goes on in the board meetings and what homeowners are aware of. And I think that we need to try to bridge that gap. And through that, Angie Rivas, our host today, is part of the new communications committee, along with Steve Jacobs and Diana Holt. And so we want to help with that communication piece, because I think that's key in getting the community involved in understanding what's going on here.
Okay. Just a side note, I see we're now up to 18. Would one of you want to check to see if maybe Thomas is trying to get in?
Sure.
I don't see him.
Okay, I just didn't want him to get too far behind if he's going to be joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. Issues that come before the board sometimes involve difficult decisions having to be made. Decisions that can involve the neighbors or even friends of yours. What process or processes would you use in order to arrive at a decision that excludes those factors for consideration? As an example, you might be a friend of a neighbor being called for violating to render a decision and imposing disciplinary action. So how would you address this as fairly?
That's a great question, and an important one, because it does happen, and sitting in judgment of your neighbors for infractions is part of the job. So part of what we as directors need to do is, and we are and should be held to a higher standard. So our properties need to look good. We need to make sure that we're not violating the rules, because how could we pass judgment on someone else? That being said, it can be awkward, and it has been awkward. So what I rely on is to maintain professionalism, certainly be open to what that homeowner, excuse me, has to say during the hearing, but always circle back to that it is our role as directors to enforce the CC&Rs. That's the job we signed on for. Is it uncomfortable? Yes, sometimes it is. But on the other side, so that was my responsibility. The responsibility of homeowners is to abide by the CC&Rs and to maintain those properties. And so as long as we do that within that kind of an understanding, that expectation is I'm doing my job and now the homeowner needs to do their job, and to arrive at what I look at as a solution path. Like, they bought their property here, they want to have a nice looking property as well. And let's just work toward that.
Okay, thank you. Next question, would you share briefly with the audience how you would describe the role of a director in managing your HOA?
So the role of a director, I mean, we have to look at the day-to-day operation. However, that is not our, thankfully, we are in a large enough association that we hire our on-site management company to do the day-to-day. So thankfully, we're not taking checks in and paying vendors and things like that. The way I look at our role is, first and foremost, is a director's role is to help maintain the association's common areas for the association. So maintaining the common areas, rule enforcement, as we discussed already, enforcing the governing documents. Financial management, we need to make sure that that collections are done, that budgets are done, that the bills are paid timely, and so on. And then operational management, making sure that the tennis courts are properly surfaced, that that the bathrooms are in order, that pest control. We have an ongoing issue with raccoons who like to live there at the association. And then on top of that, then we have the fiduciary duties of duty of loyalty, duty of care to the association, duty of loyalty, things like making sure that the information we discuss during executive session, those are those closed sessions where we discuss payment plans and disciplinary actions, that those remain confidential. So that's a role of a director. Duty of care, making sure that we do our job properly. Homeowners who listen to the open sessions we talk about getting multiple bids. That's part of how we address the duty of care, making sure, like currently we're looking at a security consultant because
That's the 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's look for Thomas. I'm
Okay.
getting parched here and see if he by chance. No, unfortunately. Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, you found him?
Well, he's there on the screen.
There he is.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Thomas. Since you joined us late, I will see if we can do a little bit of catch up here. Why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us about your personal background, just in general, maybe your reasons for running for the board.
Well, my background is that I got into real estate back in 1970. I have a broker's license in 74. I have a gold card in exchanging. I've managed several offices with other people in it. I thought with my background that I'd probably be an asset to the different homeowners around. I have never served on a board before, but I have sold a lot of properties that are condo related. And so I have some ideas about helping people that are in distress and getting ahead. But my college background was in math and physics. And that's just about it.
Okay.
I'm looking to learn.
Okay, thank you. I will go through some of the questions up to now that where we left off with the list I have. First one is, considering that there have been a number of mailbox thefts in the community, what would be your plans to eliminate and or deal with this crime?
Okay. The mailbox that we have on our street is pretty old and they need a lot of work done on them. I don't know whether or not that's a function of the board or something that we have to do as an individual. I think what we can do, I think that there are safety things that can happen. You know, we can have lock boxes that requires a key the mail person can have, and once they put the mail in there, that it's locked and it's secure. I believe that would be one of the solutions.
Okay. So I'll go through some of the questions just to get you up to where we left off with her question, or being questioned. Homeowners want to know who they are voting for in the upcoming election. With that being said, can you give us a bit of your background in the association's business area? I know you've said us a little bit of that, but get a little more time to talk about it if you'd like.
Yes, well, like I said, I've ran my own real estate offices. I ran my own escrow companies. I've also have a lot of involvement in exchanging of properties, different ways of liquidating properties. And I think I can help. I know I have a lot to learn. I know I can't just go in and go and know everything from the first from the first day, but I think I can fit in. And this is why I decided to run.
Okay. Issues that become for the board of directors sometimes involve difficult decisions to have to be made, decisions that involve neighbors or even friends of yours. What process or processes would you use to avoid taking that into consideration? As an example, it might be a neighbor who's a friend of yours being called before a CC&R violation hearing where they have to render a decision how to proceed on imposing that discipline. What would you do in this case?
Well, my policy has always been about what's right and not who's right. And if he's a friend of mine, then he knows that I'm going to tell him the truth and look for the right solution, not a favorable solution because he's my friend. Because if he is my friend, he knows that I'm going to be truthful to him and with him.
Okay, thank you. Would you share briefly with the audience how you would describe the role of a board of directors for an HOA?
Board of directors to do whatever they can to fortify or increase the value of the properties in this area and to help out the residents in this area and be available to them. That's my definition of it.
Okay. So the additional questions I'm going to ask, not back to back between the two candidates, but you will hear all the questions before we get done. So Renee, first for you, this past year, the HOA has to deal with many issues that created an executive committee. Now that the issue has been resolved, how do you see the board functioning as it moves ahead after this election?
It helps if I unmute.
Yeah.
So yes, think that's an interesting question. I'm sorry. Oh, I heard somebody else talking. Dissolving the former executive committee was in the best interest of the association. And how do we move forward? Well, we move forward just the way we are. As directors, we have to put aside our personal feelings and work together for the betterment of the community. And that is exactly what that we have been doing. Each director brings their own expertise, their own experience, their own knowledge to the table. And it's not like we have to have what I call the kumbaya moment. We're not all friends. We all are colleagues and we respect one another. We have diverse opinions and that's good. So we don't always agree and nor should we. And that's a great thing for the community because it allows us to shore up our sometimes preconceived ideas on how to come to a solution. So again, we have just move forward, and I really think that it's a really good change for the community.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, a different question for you, and we'll be going back over the questions in a few minutes. Assessments here at Sunnymead Ranch have been not raised over 9 straight years. A remarkable accomplishment in itself. However, with inflation and the recent hikes and cost of goods increasing, what do you see the need to be done to keep the assessments from having to be raised while at the same time keeping up with escalating costs?
Well, I think what they've done in the past is remarkable. And I think we just have to keep doing it. It's just being very diligent about what is needed and getting competent vendors to handle those needs. But there may be a time where we have to raise the fees, but when we do, I think it should be somewhere in the future. From the numbers that I've heard, and of course I'm not that informed on it, the numbers I heard, we do have adequate reserves so far, and we've been functioning well in a good area. setting aside reserves for fixing things and keeping up with the progress. Now, what the future holds in terms of inflation, no one really knows, but I'm sure we'll be able to handle it in a respectful manner and get the information out to the homeowners, and they'll be more than happy to participate in whatever that may come about.
Okay, thank you. Renee, going back to you, what do you consider your strongest management strength, and how would you use it to benefit the HOA and its members if elected to the board, or in your case, re-elected to the board?
I think I was telling a fellow director, it's really hard sometimes to like toot your own horn. You know, we were always trained not to do that. That being said, I'm just going to go ahead. I think it's my ability to communicate. In my previous life, that was what we did. Project management was communication. So my ability to interact with others on a sincere level. Also my communication skills. I'm not the best writer, but I do make sure that we cover all of the details. I'm also fact-based, I'm data-driven. So I'm always looking at how to look at a decision. You know, is there really an issue or is there not? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the risks as opposed to the rewards? And all of that needs to balance out. So I think that's what I bring to the table.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, back to you. If you are elected to the board, are you prepared to sign the current code of conduct that applies to all directors? How do you feel about it if a director violates the code of conduct? So it's sort of a two-part question.
How do I, okay, so the first part of the question?
First part is, would you sign the code of conduct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the second part is, if somebody violates it.
If someone violated, then I will.
Other than you, of course. I mean, what would be your thoughts on that?
Well, I would think that they should be held accountable, and whatever that is, they should be held accountable. We all should be held accountable to the standards that is set forth, not only in the Davis Sterling book, but also into we take a code of conduct all the time as a realtor, and so I haven't seen very much deviation from all the other code of conducts. Business go. Do your very best and maintain a fiduciary relationship with your clients.
Okay, thank you. Renee, back to you. There has been much chatter over the past year regarding new spending on new amenities for Sunnymead Ranch. Construction of a new mini golf course, construction of a new freestanding exercise gym, and the purchase of a pool table for the clubhouse are examples that have been floated recently. If re-elected, in your case, re-elected to the board, what is your plan to fund these projects if they are approved?
Great question. While those were bantered about, I do not believe that the executive committee moved forward with or had plans on moving forward with any of those things. I pulled up Director Riddick and I had a town hall meeting with homeowners to talk about their thoughts about what they would like to see at the association. I firmly believe, again, here goes my communication skills, is that the directors can't make these decisions in a vacuum. What's important to me may not be important to Angie or Thomas or the rest of the homeowners online here. There's lots of things that people would like, and we have to float them and see, are we willing to pay for those items? So our items come down into 3 different buckets of money, we'll say. Reserve expenses, which to Thomas's point, thankfully Sunnymead Ranch is very well funded. The prior boards have done a great job of making sure that we have had reserve funds to pay for the items that we know are breaking down and so on. And then we have operating expenses. That's like our checkbook at home. You know, we pay the mortgage and the utilities. And then there's the capital expenses. And those are the things that we don't currently have. So if we wanted to put the room addition on the house or the new facility, you know, fitness center at the clubhouse, that would be a capital improvement. And we would have to, not that we couldn't do it, but we'd have to figure out how we're going to spend, where we're going to get that money. So I think I've lost track of the question, but to wrap this up is that long-term and short-term planning with homeowners is key. I mean, again, anything is possible, assuming we have the cash. And if we don't have the cash, we have to figure out, is it worth it to us to pay for those improvements? So, you know, a golf course, who knows? But that's not something we can do in a vacuum.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thomas, this is kind of an interesting question. So I may, if you want me to repeat it, I will. Are you a cup half full or a cup half empty kind of individual? And why do you think that's important in your function as a director?
That's
great question, huh?
My question. I'm just saying.
Start.
I'm just
I think each item that comes up has to be looked at and dissected and in a process of thinking it through. And some things are half full and some things are half empty. I think we have a lot of facilities here that could be utilized more if we put an effort into it. We have a lovely clubhouse, and it normally is empty, you know. And I think that we could go about getting more activity toward and seeing what the homeowners want. But like Renee say, we need to really solicit their input to see what that looks like. And maybe on an ongoing basis, do that, you know, solicit their opinion about different things. Because we're here to serve them, not ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Back to Renee. HOA directors and our volunteers. Being that's the case, please share your volunteer roles that you have held and benefited our community. I assume it's outside of the HOA role.
Yes, that's a great question. And it's funny, somebody had on social media said, I'm trying to keep my job. My husband likes to say that I work probably as many hours doing board work as I did in the past when I actually got a paycheck. But other volunteer, since I retired, you know, when we work for a living, it's really tough to be a volunteer and to give back in any substantial way. But since I retired, I was able to do a number of things that I've always wanted to do. I donate time at Feeding America at their food warehouse, sorting foods and so on. I took up becoming a docent at the Mission Inn, also a volunteer position. I also donate time with the Rivers and Lands Conservancy here in Riverside County. It started when we decided to purchase the top of Rubidoux Mountain so that cross could remain there. So I believe that it is important to give back if you have the time to do that.
Okay. And one other before we go back and take the list in reverse order. Thomas, if you could change a single CC&R, what would you change and why?
I don't think that I'm in a position to comment on it because I'm not as versed on the CCs and Rs as I could have, that I should have. I'm in the process of studying them and reading them. But at this particular time, I could not just make a decision as to anything that be changed, because I'm sure there was a lot of thought that went off into it. And I think I would have to become a little bit more versed than to really make a comment on something that would be needed, be changed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to go through the questions that I went through but in reverse of who's being asked. Renee, assessments here at Sunnymead Ranch have not been raised over 9 years, a remarkable accomplishment in itself. However, inflation at recent cost and the cost of goods has been ever increasing. What do you see the needs to be done to keep assessments from having to be raised while at the same time keeping up with escalating costs?
That is a great question, one that we're going to struggle with. I mean, the board of directors will struggle with this. I mean, we know that higher costs are just a fact of life under normal times, but you know, we not only face just the regular rate of inflation that we have in the past, but now we pay higher rates due to supply chain issues and increased cost in human capital. You know, the minimum wage continues to rise, and therefore it just trickles down to us. So if our landscapers' minimum wage has gone up and they have their staff for us, they're not going to absorb that fee. They're going to pass it on to us. So keeping assessments at a reasonable rate, and I'm not going to say that they have to remain stagnant here, because 9 years, that's an amazing feat. But I pulled out the budget in preparation for this. So it's important to look at like where we can make changes. Our largest expense is through administration, which is of course people, legal, and so on. We also, and then followed by landscaping. So for administrative costs, we're like $725,000, we'll say. Landscaping, $675,000. And then we have expenses like insurance at, you know, well over $200,000, as well as utilities. Got to pay those at, you know, $500,000. So what we can do is we can look at the areas that we can reduce. So landscaping, while we're not going to reduce the amount of land we have been moving forward, pulling up the turf, which of course then doesn't need to be mowed every week, and replacing it with drought tolerant plant materials, which hopefully will reduce our expenses for water and so on. So it's just a very mindful process, looking at expenses and income.
Okay, thank you. So Thomas, a question that we had before for her. This past year, the HOA has had to deal with many issues, even created an executive committee. Now that the issue has been resolved, how do you see the board functioning as it moves ahead after the election?
I'm not sure that I'm aware of exactly what you're referring to when you said they had to deal with some issues. I'm not clear about the issues that
unfortunately, there's not much I can add because I'm just acting as moderator and I don't know all the history of Sunnymead. So.
Yeah, well, I'm as blind as you are.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Okay, then back to Renee. If you are reelected to the board, are you prepared to sign the current code of conduct that applies to all directors? And how do you feel if a director violates this code of conduct?
Absolutely. The code of conduct is a very practical matter. The code of conduct is put into place to protect all of us, our association, from needless liability. The reality is that, as I think I mentioned, as directors, we're held to a higher standard. So when you're a director, you're a director. You put that director hat on, and it's not like you can then take it off and then go talk trash or put us in a position that we could get sued and say, but I didn't have my director hat on. Guess what? You're a director until you no longer are a director. So it's just common sense. And this latest code of conduct, and I have to applaud the executive committee for putting in a code of conduct that not only talks about like, I promise to do this or I promise not to do that, but also has enforcement steps in it where it's articulated, if you do this, then here are the steps that the enforcement steps, just much like our CC&Rs. So it is important that that we have code of conducts in place. And so if you violate it, then the enforcement is there to help you, bring you into compliance.
Okay, thank you. Back to Thomas. What do you consider your strongest management strength, and how would you use it to benefit the HOA and its members if elected to the board?
Let's see. I've had extensive training working for quantum management system. We used to train most of the real estate offices throughout California and across the nation. I have done extensive study in counseling, which requires to listen to what the issues are and to try and enable a person to crystallize in on what the problem is. In the context of any problem lies a solution, and trying to then enable them to express thoughts about creates their own solutions to the problem. They begin to crystallize it because now they begin to own their own way of getting out of that way. So that's one thing that I do. I've done a lot of training with realtors mostly. I've volunteered for, we had a program at one time called That Choice, where we used to take the gang members from LA and take them out to Joshua Tree and hang them over a 250-foot cliff and do counseling with them. And many of them changed their whole lives, whole perspective on living. So there's a lot that I feel as though that maybe that I'm leaving out right now that I've done over my lifetime.
Okay, thank you. Back to Renee. Are you a cup half full or a cup half empty kind of individual? And why do you think that's important in a function as a on the board of directors?
I really like that question. That's an interesting one. I would say that I tend to lean toward half full, the more optimistic. However, really, I think where my sweet spot is being more the realist. You know, again, data driven, pros and cons. So I'm not the automatic like, oh, that's never going to work. No, so I'm just, all you have to ask my husband is, honey, we could do this. And with enough YouTube videos, I typically can. So I do tend to be more optimistic, but I definitely hover around realism. And I think that's important for our community, because you do want optimism in the leadership. To Thomas's point, this is a great community, and we have an opportunity to increase the user experience, the quality of life with for our homeowners. That being said, I will interject one thing here, is that I know that during my career, I commuted a great deal, and I never really worried about the board or what was going on, because my assessments were reasonable, my community looked good, and it was really, in my opinion, a vote of confidence on the management of the association. So it is challenging when people work really hard and they don't have the time to come to the association and hang out and so on. But hopefully if we could just put COVID in the rearview mirror, we can start having events again and help encourage. I keep talking to Thomas here on my screen, and bring our people back.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, a question that I had for her before. There has been much chatter over the past year regarding new spending on amenities for Sunny Ranch, construction of a mini golf course, construction of a freestanding exercise gym, and the purchase of a pool table for the clubhouse. Are some of the examples that have been floated. If you get elected to the board, what is your plan to fund these projects if they are approved?
Well, I think we have to examine that. I think, as Renee said, that we have to look at those things and then find out what the community want to have happen. What do they see that needs to have happen? But at the same time, we have to deal with the issue at hand in terms of the cost and whether or not, who's it going to benefit in the long run. So I think the combination of the two is a decision that the board will make. And I think it'll encumber all of these items, like the opinion of the homeowners and the need for such a project. And all of this will be examined by the board. That will be their function. I have no decision that I can make on it at this point because I don't know the pros and the cons of the situation or of each item that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Renee, back to you. If you could change one single CC&R, what would you change and why?
So I'm going to cheat here. That question came up the last open forum or the last candidate forum, and a fellow director had said they would change the 67% rule, and I'm going to take that and run with it. So for our homeowners, in order for us to make changes to the CC&Rs, it needs to be put out to a vote to our membership, and 67% need to vote on this. You may or may not be aware that the upcoming election, we require a 25% quorum in order to hold it that first night. I believe in the history of Sunnymead Ranch, we have never even gotten first quorum, so 25%. So then, by the way, it drops down to 15% to have the election. So making changes to our CC&Rs is extremely difficult. So if there were one rule I would change that one. Because, because if we could do that, there are lots, I mean, these things were written back in the 80s, for goodness sakes. And they were like boilerplate. They talk about condos. We have no condos here on Sunnymead Ranch. So there's a lot of room for improvement, and we have had committees go through that, and so I think that's something we should work on eventually.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, back to you. HOA directors are volunteers. Being that said, please share your volunteer roles that you have had that benefited our community or your community, since I don't live there.
Like I said before, I used to work with quantum management systems, and we used to do quite a few things. We at one time had a program how to eradicate unemployment on Earth. And we met and eventually we got 300 people that have been chronically unemployed. And in 9 months, we had them all employed. They all had a job. And then the key to that, epiphany was the fact that we finally started asking them the questions, what is it that you would do for free? And we'll figure out a way to get you paid for it. And when we made that progress, we found that a lot of people were in jobs that they really hated, and that's why end up dropping out. Like I said, we work with the gangs in Los Angeles, you know, to kind of cut down on that. Not just in Los Angeles County. We actually went to the jails and got gang members out, and we would do counseling with them. And we made progress on those fronts, changed many of the lives. I think we changed the most. The best part we got out of it was to start training the family around the gang members too, so that they had the support. We found at first that we would train them a way of thinking to create a win-win modality among people that they're dealing with, rather than to, so anyway, we end up getting the family members, the close family members, so that when they went back, they would not be just on their own. They would have the support of the family. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question. I think those are some of the things that I've done, and I'm really proud of.
Okay, and I understand that's my question, but I'm just a reader, so okay. I do have a question that came from one homeowner, and this has sort of been similar to a question I had from the other list of homeowner questions. Considering that there has, excuse me, can you assure the homeowners that the monthly assessments will not go up anytime soon? So,
Is that to me or to Thomas?
First for Renee.
Can I assure the homeowners? No, absolutely cannot. I think it would be unconscionable. Again, that whole, you know, I'm optimistic, but I'm also a realistic person. We have budget planning coming up, and we will work our darndest at keeping the assessments at the same if we can. But you know, it's just like your home budget. You know, you have so much income, and guess what? Our footprint of our homes isn't going to increase. We have 2,677 homes, period. And that's what we base our budget off of, the income from those. So you have income, you have expenses. Something's got to give. You know, if expenses continue to rise, then if your income doesn't increase, then you're going to be upside down. So no, I cannot make that that promise to homeowners, unfortunately. However, I think the best way to look at it is to make sure that we have a board in place that is pragmatic, and you don't wait until you're in the hole, or you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. My old adages, I'm sorry. But if an increase is needed, and it's a small increase, because you know, thankfully we do have a big footprint, so small increases actually add up to a lot of money. But you need a board that's pragmatic and prudent and business savvy.
Okay, Thomas, the same question to you.
Okay, will you repeat the question?
Sure. Sorry, I just. Can you assure us the homeowners that our monthly assessments will not go up anytime soon?
Well, I think the key word there is anytime soon. Based on the results of the reserves and things, I don't believe that it's going to go up, but I could not make a definitive judgment on that. But I would promise that I will do everything I can to keep it from going up, and try to reserve as much as we possibly have.
Can I jump onto that? And I do appreciate, you know, Thomas hasn't been on the board, so he doesn't have that background. But I want to clarify for homeowners, is when I was saying robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we do have a very healthy, well-funded reserve account. So when I say what we don't want to do is pull money from our reserve accounts to pay for operating expenses, because that is a major problem. That's a recipe for disaster. The reserve accounts are set aside. Every month we pay into the reserve, knowing that the roof will need to be replaced, and it did. And thankfully, they don't rely on us board members to know when the roof needs to be replaced. By law, by the Davis-Sterling Act, we are required to have reserve studies done every year to say, how long is the roof going to last? Currently, what is it going to take to replace that roof? How long do we have, and so on. So it is critical that we don't reduce our reserve accounts for operating expenses or capital expenses.
Okay. I do have two more questions that came up, and these were questions both for Angel and Thomas, because you are not currently on the board. And I don't know all the background, so I'm going to read the background that they gave and the question so you can hear. Your desire to be elected to the Sunnymead Ranch Board of Directors. There are two different terms up for election, a 2-year term to replace an incumbent, and possibly a 1-year term to refill the recall seat if the recall is successful. Can you explain why you are not also running for the 1-year seat if the recall is successful? And again, I don't know the background. I mean, I'm just reading the questions as provided.
And you directed the question to me, right?
It was to be excuse me, to you and to Angel, but Angel's not with us this morning.
Right, he's sick.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's in hospital. I'm not privy to what's going on with any recall. To be honest with you, I have no facts concerning it, how it's going or anything like that. Not being on the board or not being privy to the knowledge that, Renee has, or in fact, I wasn't even aware of recall. I have not seen anything regarding it. I'm sorry, I'd love to be able to answer it, but
I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know the background because I'm not part of your HOA. There was a second question, and I'm going to read it again, the background in the question. If elected, knowing the circumstances of what the current board of directors have been put through with regards to continuous legal filings against Sunnymead Ranch, that's the background. What approach are you prepared to take to bring unity, understanding, and harmony between all 5 board members, so not to continue costing homeowners undue legal expense and putting the homeowners at risk of assessment increases?
Well, I think the best thing that you can possibly do in any situation like that is to get the parties together and sit down and try to have a discussion between them to find out what the issues are and whether or not there's something that can be done to improve whatever is going wrong. I think that is the most, in my experience, getting the parties together and explaining everyone's position and being able to listen to the other party's position and is the best way of resolving those types of things without involving litigation.
Okay, thank you. That concludes, and Angelica, that concludes all the questions I have that were submitted to me. And I believe the next part is the 2 candidates get an opportunity to do a closing statement.
Fred, I noticed on the Q&A that there are 3 homeowners submitted.
Oh, they submitted in the chat?
Yeah, so
Hold on.
down along the bottom, there should be like a, okay.
Okay.
We might, I mean, since we have since we were lacking the 1 candidate today, we might go those.
So you're okay if I read them?
I'm good.
Okay, so I will kind of first question, if elected to the board, how do you plan on making sure that we don't have incumbents involving assaults like the one that took place last September involving a homeowner's son? I'm just reading the question.
Okay.
So
I'll go ahead and answer. And so so the question has to do with, there was an assault incident at the Lake Club facility this last year, and I think the question is, how do we plan on making sure it doesn't happen again? Well, unfortunately, we can't guarantee that acts of violence don't happen, unfortunately. But what the the current board has done to that end is, I think I mentioned earlier that we are employing the services of an independent security consultant to come in and look at it with fresh eyes, with trained eyes. So we walked the property. I know I explained the incident, where it happened, so that he could see and perhaps provide us as a community with ways to mitigate, ways to protect ourselves as much as possible. So that involved the Lake Club facility itself, the RV lot, and so on. So while we cannot guarantee, unfortunately, we are working toward getting this security assessment done.
Okay, I'll go to a different question. Thomas, with the pandemic finally winding down, how do you see the process of reopening the clubhouse for social events taking place?
How do I see it opening up? It's a positive thing, of course. We, get out of this pandemic. It's really been a undertaking, to say the least. And I think we can start to share more activities. And like I say again, trying to solicit the different homeowners and get their opinion as to what should be taking place to make it more of an enjoyable living in this area. I enjoy living in this area, and I came from an area that was much more expensive. I lived 30 years in South Hills, and I found that the support that you have over here among the homeowners and the communication is much more than it was over there, even though it was a much more expensive area. I think that should be about it. I look forward to enjoying some card games and different things with the clubhouse, and I think we have a good path, and getting over this pandemic is really, it's time to exhale.
Okay, let's go back to the two questions. So Thomas, I'm going to give you the same question she had at the beginning. So to the board, how do you plan on making sure that we don't have incidents involving assault like the one that took place last September involving a homeowner's son?
Okay. Like Renee say, you can't not predict. I mean, that type of thing, it happens, unfortunately. We can put up signs and counsel as many people as we possibly can to try to be courteous to one another, but it isn't always going to be that way. We know that, but we just have to do the very best we can. Especially, I don't know how old the son was that did the violence, but I know I have a son, and trying to control him is not always an easy thing to do. And so I think what we have to do is set up adequate prosecution for wrongdoers, and try to remind each other to try to be courteous to one another. And that's about it. But you're never going to be able to root out the evil in man sometime,
Okay, thank you. Renee, back to you. With the pandemic finally winding down, how do you see the process of reopening the clubhouse for social events taking place?
I'm a former co-chair of the activities committee, so that is something that is important to me. Obviously, during COVID, like Thomas's thing, it's time to exhale. Yes, thank goodness. So the challenge that we have at the association right now is that we've just been going from 0 miles per hour to now needing to ramp up. So we need to, and we have been actively recruiting for volunteers for our activities committee, because again, kind of going back to, you know, the cost of things. Again, we can do anything. If we have a lot of volunteers, that helps offset some of those expenses. If we don't have a lot of volunteers to help, we still can do the events, however, will cost us more money. So it is that risk and reward, pros and cons. So we have 22 homeowners online today. Please volunteer. I think initially some of the easy things that we've talked about are doing things outside. So again, we don't need to worry about, you know, what's the current mandate, mask, don't mask, or whatnot. So I think that we're going to continue moving forward. You know, concerts in the park, always a big thing. We've talked about doing movie nights outside. We are doing a shredding event coming up. Shredding event is for the paperwork after tax time. So slowly but surely, we're going to get back to normal, or the new normal.
Okay, I have a few more questions that have been added to the chat. Thomas, and I'm just going to go back because that's kind of hard to go back and forth. Can you explain to all of us the difference between operating expenses and reserve amounts? Please explain why controlling operating expenses is so important.
Operating expenses, my understanding would be the ongoing short-term debts that accumulate, where your operating reserve is for your long-term repairs that needs to be done. But normally the operating is like you have office management, you have your gardeners, you have all of these things, and they have to be paid on an ongoing basis. Whereas reserve may be for putting on a roof or some capital improvement, you know, that deteriorates or to that effect.
Okay, Renee, the same question.
Okay, I was going to ask you if I could just jump in and dovetail on that. So I alluded to it earlier. We have 3 buckets of money. We have the reserve accounts, the operating expenses, and then capital improvement. So I like to bring it back to home ownership because that's what we're most familiar with. So our operating expenses are like our checkbook. You know, you put your paycheck in, you write your mortgage payment, you pay your utilities. So that's operating. You know, money in, money goes out. Hopefully you get more money in and less money going out. The reserve accounts is much like the savings account that we should hopefully all have, where we salt some money aside for, you know, that car is going to break down or it's going to need new tires or things like that. That planful savings. Capital improvements are things like, I just got the I just wanted to put solar on the roof. That's not something that I currently, you know, I had, it's not a current asset, therefore it wouldn't be in my reserve account. It's a new expense. And so if I wanted it, then I had to figure out how I was going to pay for it. Whether I was going to, you know, put it on my credit card, take out a loan. So those are the analogies of the buckets of money. Each one is important and in understanding. So operating expenses, money in, money out, reserve accounts, critical, because if you don't have the reserve accounts and you need to put tires on the car and you don't have the cash, then that's a problem.
Okay. The next 3 questions are sort of about you personally. So I'll start out with Thomas, and same question will go to Renee. What are your strongest points and qualifications for each candidate? So obviously, Thomas, this is your opportunity to talk about yourself.
Well, I have done a lot of studies and teaching of, like I say before, counseling. And in that process, it teaches you to listen to what the problem is and really try to identify the problem and then see what can be done, the relevant steps necessary to solve that particular issue. And I think that that's a process that I learn and I practice, asking questions until I get clarity as to what's going on, and hopefully support the people that have any problem to be able to get those problems solved.
Okay, Renee, the same question.
Well, so much like Thomas, and I appreciate the fact that you need to understand what the problem might be, and before you can solve the problem, you need to know all of the intricacies of the problem. So critical thinking skills is important, the ability to ask questions and be objective. So oftentimes, and it's certainly something I struggle with, is not jumping to a conclusion, but to let the facts speak for themselves. So the ability to ask questions, critical thinking skills, and then factoring into, and I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of the question about.
Strong points and qualifications.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for filling that in for me. Integrity. I will do what is right. I am not willing to shave corners. I'm not willing to certainly break any laws. Integrity is critical to me, critical to this role, critical to our association.
Okay. Renee, I'm going to give you the next question then, Thomas. Why are you running for the board?
That's a great question. As I said, it's a very challenging role, even under the best of circumstances, and it has been rather contentious recently. That being said, fundamentally, I'm an original owner here. I'm retired here. This is my major investment. This is kind of my retirement fund that I'm living in. And if the association is not managed well, it will affect my retirement. It will affect my checking account. So as trite as that sounds, it really is true. We talk about raising and assessments. You know, we are incredibly lucky to have assessments this long at 108. That's very, very reasonable. But it doesn't take much research to find that if we, the association, don't protect ourselves against liability of all sorts, and we're not just talking contentious liability, but there was one thing about an association where a young man was injured on the swing set. I believe the award was like $20 million against the association. Well, unfortunately, their coverage wasn't $20 million. Well, guess what? Guess who pays that? Every homeowner. So this is why I serve, because I can't afford not to.
Okay. Thomas, same question.
I wanted to, first of all, I enjoy people, and I particularly enjoy my neighbors. And if there's something I can do to help them in situations, and different situations come up, I'd like to make myself available. And I saw this as something I could spend time doing, and just trying to make it become a better neighbor, and at the same time try to support my neighbors around me as best I can. And when it comes to real estate, I think I have quite a few solutions that maybe the average person hasn't had the exposure to. And over 52 years of having done this, That's just about it.
Okay. Right now, we have one more question, unless another one pops into the chat. Probably one of the interesting questions. Why should homeowners vote for you? And that goes to each of you, not just you.
I'll
Thomas.
let Thomas jump right in there.
Well, if they, I promise to put my integrity on the line and do the very best I can to support each and every one of you in your magnificence and on an ongoing basis. And I promise not to try to be undercover. In other words, I'm not trying to do anything that's other than to support you in your magnificence. And that's what you're going to get from me.
Okay, and same question for you, Renee.
So why should you vote for me? Well, thankfully, I have an advantage over Thomas in the sense that people can see what I have done, that I'm kind of measured. I talk a lot, but I think the most important thing is my goals are your goals as homeowners. I mean, we all want to live in a community in which our property values will increase. Sadly, our neighborhoods, as I mentioned earlier, are showing a bit of wear, which is typical. However, you know, we know that with home maintenance, that they need not be that way. Then on the other side of that coin, from just regular, you know, touching up the trim, we have those properties that are just the eyesore of the neighborhood, and every one of us has at least one of those in our neighborhoods. And it is the board's responsibility to enforce the CC&Rs, and we currently are discussing increasing the fines for those violations, because if the fine is so low that it doesn't incent somebody to take action, then they're useless. I dealt with a city recently, and she told me, you know, our fines are like 20 years outdated, the dollar amounts. So if we're charging somebody $25 because they have no grass in their front yard, well, it costs them $40 a month for a lawn or for a gardener and water to irrigate that grass. It's cheaper for them to just be in violation, and that's the wrong message. So we need to change that paradigm and get people into compliance. And that's, I believe, every person's goal here. Every responsible homeowner here on the ranch wants better looking properties, and we as the board, we can't do everything, but we can affect as much change as possible in that area.
Okay, thank you. Another question has been submitted, and I'll let Renee start out with this.
Okay.
Rule or request. Understanding that there are rules, do you think it is important to be flexible with individual homeowner circumstances?
I'm going to take that as a CC&R violations viewpoint. So yes, yes and no. Homeowners may know that that there's a series of letters that go out when you have a violation. You know, the first one is, oh, by the way, please put your trash cans away. You know, like, oh, I wasn't aware. Then the second one, seriously, we want you to not store your trash cans outside. To the third letter, which is, come and explain to the board why you don't understand that the trash cans need to be hidden, or you need to have grass, or something to that effect. And that's what those hearings are about. And so every month, those hundreds of people are invited to come and discuss with the board their violations. And that gives the homeowner the opportunity to tell us the backstory. You know, some of them, we just know that, you know, there's no grass out there because they just haven't done anything. And they really probably don't intend to do anything. On the flip side to that, we hear lots of stories, you know, I mean, we're not immune to having a heart here. You know, people die, people are sick, you know, there was a fire. I know we had a violation, and come to find out, well, the house had a fire and that's why it looked that way. So the board is allowed to provide extensions and so on, but fundamentally, we are required to enforce the CC&R. So we have some discretion and some leeway, but ultimately we must, for everybody's benefit, enforce the CC&Rs.
Okay, Thomas, same question to you, and I'll read it because it's been a little bit of time here. Understanding that there are rules, do you think it is important to be flexible with individual homeowner circumstances?
Yes, and try to be as supportive as possible. But as Renee said, you know, you do have to have certain rules, and those rules are put there for a reason, and that's to keep the value of the properties up, and that affects everyone else as well. So even though you may have a circumstance, we can certainly look at that and see whether or not we could come up with some solutions that could cover a different way of looking at it, a different way of going about it, whatever the problem may be. But ultimately, we don't want to have no grass in your yard and you know, and just violation of the CC&R. It's just ways that we could probably submit some ideas that could absolutely change the situation for you, or something that you never really thought of doing, the homeowner that's having this particular problem. But we have to have those CC&Rs in place, and they have to be lived up to. Whether or not we can provide some solutions for you, that is the case. That is what we're looking for, I would imagine.
Okay, thank you. Another question has come up, so I'll read it both for you. Thomas, I'll let you to go first, then I'll read it again for Renee, because it is a long one. A lot of homeowners complain about how the HOA property looks awful lately. If elected to the board, what is your plan for revitalizing the appearance of the HOA, including the common areas as well as the homeowner properties? So, Thomas.
I think we got a fantastic looking clubhouse. I don't, the clubhouse there and the area. It's always looked really nice to me. Now, if someone has a specific complaint, my complaint in terms of where I would like to see some improvements is whether or not the mailbox that we have can be replaced with a secure mailbox, so that we won't have that mail theft that's going around. I don't know whether or not we should do that as an association, whether or not we should ask the individual homeowners to do the repairs on it. There are always going to be some people falling short, and this is why we have to have these rules and we have to enforce those rules. But in general, I think they do a heck of a job, especially around the clubhouse, because I think it's beautiful.
And Fred, you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah,
there we go.
A lot of homeowners complain about how the HOA property looks awful lately. If elected to the board, what is your plan for revitalizing the appearance of our HOA, including the common areas as well as homeowner properties?
So I'll take the common area first. So homeowners should be aware that that we're currently renovating the turf. So the association has been able to avail itself of significant dollars in removing turf grass, which is the single most water thirsty plants we have. So EMWD is allowing a significant funds to pull up all of that grass and replant and change the irrigation systems to drought tolerant materials. So in order to do that along Sunny Mead Ranch Parkway in front of, like, say, Old Lake Drive and so on, it looks horrible right now, but that's just all part of the process, because we have to kill off those grasses first. So instead of taking the expense of like digging it all up, we're allowing it to die, and then we're going to replant that with water saving materials. So that perhaps is what they see, and that looks poor. In addition to that, we have miles and miles and miles of fencing that that the association maintains, and the board has undertaken the task of not just being reactive to this fence is broken, we'll replace this, but knowing that this fence is 30 years old and it's looking pretty shabby, and so we have a proactive plan to replace fencing. We have a great landscaping company. I think they're doing a fantastic job. Keep in mind that the footprint of Sunny Mead Ranch is huge. Look at that picture behind me. It is huge, and we have like 4,000 trees. Our crews work, and they've cordoned off Sunny Mead Ranch so that they're in one neighborhood this week. And if a tree blows down, they're on it. But if an area looks bad this week, trust me, they're getting to it. If it's something dramatic like a tree going down, then call the office and they'll address that. And then I'll just, again, reiterate, homeowner properties, again, it's about consistent enforcement of the CC&Rs. Just keep on whittling away. To Thomas's point, I mean, it's nice to be able to help with those homeowners, and we find ourselves, the board, oftentimes during these hearings explaining to people about how to plant grass. So some of the things we've discussed, much like the town hall meeting that we had, is to perhaps have some kind of an event where we could have people come and explain to non-gardeners what's the best way of planting grass, what kind of plants will work in our environment here in the Inland Empire and so on, to help improve the properties.
Okay, thank you. Another question has just popped in. If elected to the board, what is your personal vision for the future of our HOA? Renee?
My personal vision, I would say, I would like to see our community come together, be less contentious. There's no magic bullet in that. I think the ability to bring homeowners together for common goals, or events at the Lake Club, is helpful to promote that, but it's not required. I mean, for 30 years, I commuted back and forth, and I was perfectly happy here. So I envision a community that's well maintained, community oriented, looks good, happy and safe. The safety is kind of hard, but I would like to see more activities. A couple of the gals that come to our yoga group, they walk. I would love to see more things like that. Walking groups, bike riding. You go to Riverside and you see like 20 bikes. Drive by. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, the more our community is out on the street, walking, enjoying our community, the better it will be.
Okay. Thomas, same question. If elected to the board, what is your personal vision for the future of our HOA?
I think having more activities, getting more use out of our clubhouse, and making sure that we are doing what we need to do in order to extrapolate from the members themselves, what they like to see happen. as far as activities with the board. I mean, so with the clubhouse and the different things. I don't know whether or not I still bring my mailbox up because I don't know whether or not it, maybe I just should go and get my mailbox fixed or set it up. But I think those mailbox, because of the fact that they are, you can just pull them open and pull the mail out. And it has happened to me. I'm sure it happened to other people too. I would like to see some unity among those mailbox. Mine is leaning over, this and that, and it's really easy. But I'd like to see a lockable situation and get that improved. I'm hoping I'm addressing your concerns, because it sounds like I'm all over the place.
We do have one more question, which we may have to make our last, since we also have to do the closing statements in a few minutes. So Thomas, read it to you, and then I'll read it to Renee. It's a longie. Our HOA currently allows up to 6 guests per day to use our amenities, except the workout room, for free. While accompanied by a homeowner, what are your thoughts on keeping the number the same, or would you consider reducing that number? Please note that fishing by guests, the cost of which we share, is included in what the guests can use and keep for free. If you want to, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, well, I don't know what problems are, if there is a problem with having a six guests. Is quite a few people, and it sounds like it would be. That would be reasonable to me, unless there's a problem, and a problem I'm not aware of, not being on the board, not hearing the complaints that comes about having 6 members. But 6 members sounds like sufficient number for, I certainly think it should be.
Okay. Renee, I'll read it again because it's a long question. Our HOA currently allows up to 6 guests per day to use our amenities, except for the workout room, for free, while accompanied by homeowner. What are your thoughts on keeping the number the same, or would you consider reducing the number? Please note that fishing by guests, the cost we all share, is included in what the guest can use and keep the fish for free.
I echo Thomas's first statement or question, which is it a problem? I mean, have we experienced problems? And this is something that we as the board have discussed already. And again, goes back to the data-driven side of me, which is, by the way, we've approved a new access control system. So what I would like to know as a director is, how many guests are currently using our facilities, and what are they doing there? I mean, are they just walking, or are they fishing, or are they at the pool? I don't know. So before I would jump to any kind of decision or position on whether to reduce it or increase it, or is it a problem, is to actually dig into the data. So I think it's important to know how many guests are on the property and what are they doing. So for example, and I'll address the issue with the fishing, because that seems to be a hot button here in our community. I mean, we pay, and keep in mind, remember those CC&Rs? It is baked into our CC&Rs that we stock that lake. So to what extent, it doesn't say, but it is baked in. But if on any given month, we have, these are just extremes, so please understand that. Say we have 50 guests fishing and 5 homeowners. That might be a problem, but we don't know that. And if it were 50 homeowners and 5 guests, then obviously not a problem. So again, we have to look at the data. So we have to track our guests. The other hot button for me is the pool. if we have 6 homeowners and 36 guests at any one time at the pool, then that might be a problem, because we have to maintain the property, the decking, the pool chemicals, also the security is always a factor in that as well. So I don't know if that fully answered the question or just raised more questions.
Okay, that then concludes the questions that I have as a moderator. And this is now your opportunity. I think, Angelique, they get 2 minutes or 3 minutes to do a closing statement.
So I'll just jump in, Thomas. So as I mentioned, I have served since 2019. I look forward to serving again on the board. I am a homeowner here, just like you. Your goals are my goals. I don't have, lofty ambitions here. I'm going to read from my little flyer here. My goals again are looking at where we can save money, because we know our expenses are going up. Try to maintain our assessments in a reasonable fashion, improve homeowner experience, and to Thomas's point, that's getting people engaged. We are never going to get all 2,600 homeowners or almost 2,700 homeowners down at the Lake Club at any one time. That's just not going to happen, and we know that. But we would like to make it a welcoming place for all homeowners. So we would like to encourage their participation in committees and in events and so on. But again, my key is to improve the property look and feel. And again, it's not a very popular position to say, like, we need to increase the fines and increase the letters, because I had a conversation with my neighbor just the other day saying, HOAs are just so picky. Well, that's why we bought here, so that we don't have properties, we don't have cars up on blocks and cars parked on the lawns and so on. So that's what I stand for. So I don't have great lofty, I'm gonna, tint the water purple or something at the lake, or have a regatta. I just want this to be a nice place to live for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, and I want to echo exactly what Renee is saying as well. I really can't say that I'm going in to fix anything, because I know it's going to take me at least 6 months to a year to even figure out where the restrooms are, So I want to tread lightly in terms of what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to do the very best I possibly can to support you in your desire to have a great place to live. And whatever that looks like at the time, then you'll see me in there trying to help and make that happen. Not going in with a sledgehammer, trying to tear everything down, because I don't know what needs to be fixed and whether or not we need a sledgehammer or do we need a wrench, So I am totally a blank sheet at this point, So what will be written on that, I don't know, but I know I guarantee you that I will commit myself to try to make this as meaningful a neighborhood as I possibly can.
Thank you both for your comments. I believe that completes my role in this. Angelique, I believe you have some other things to talk about.
Yes, so I just want to thank you, Mr. Fred Bartz, for being our moderator today. And also thanks to the homeowners who submitted questions and actually submitted a lot during the meeting. So that was pretty awesome. And also to our candidates, thank you so much for being here. So a few important dates to look at is the next Meet the Candidate Forum. So if you guys didn't get your answers question or your questions answered today. There's another opportunity Wednesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. So if you guys, were too shy today, you guys can go ahead and go to that and hopefully get to meet the other candidate as well. And ballot materials, they're going to be mailed to the homeowners no later than March 25th, and election date is April 27th. If you guys want more information on the election, you guys can go to www.oursunnymead.com/2022-annual-election. And if you guys don't have anything else, this concludes the meeting today. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Angie. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much, Fred. Thomas, it's always a pleasure to see you. And unfortunately, Angel is ill, and hopefully we will see him on the next open session or the next Meet the Candidate. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.